Hey everybody, it's AbderianBunny, and I just wanted to thank you all so much for 6,000 subscribers. I can't believe it. You guys are so awesome. All the feedback I've gotten, the requests, and the fan art. Oh my god, you guys, the fan art! It all makes me so happy. Sorry, I haven't been doing a whole lot of content lately. Busy with adult life. Adult life sucks. But I really wanted to do something special for you guys. So my brain puked out a lame idea and said, hey, read something. I don't normally like to read out loud, so just know I could only read a portion of this chapter, even though I wanted to do the whole thing. It's chapter 11 of Flowey is Not a Good Life Coach by Unrestedjade. Go show her some love and read her fic, because it is amazing. I'll put a link to her Tumblr and the fic in the description, okay? So I put together this for y'all, and threw in some sound effects to hopefully make it more interesting. So yeah, you'll probably be sick of me by the time this is over, so let's give it a whirl! Cyber hugs for all of you. Thank you so much. Make sure to check out my DA for more content and status updates, okay? Love you guys! Thank you! Bye-bye!
That's not my fault. Papyrus crossed his arms. Maybe if you'd given me some time to prepare, instead of just inviting yourself along.
Do you want me around or not?
Papyrus's jaw snapped shut mid-sentence. He blinked.
Because I'm getting confused,
Sans went on, glaring down at the churned-up ground. The fresh snow was filling in and evening out the dips and gouges. It would be treacherous to walk on.
I mean,
he shrugged.
I haven't been pushy, have I? You don't want to talk about it, so we don't talk about it. You're scaring me, but I'm leaving it alone, because that's what you want me to do. And you've been tolerating me for the last few days, since that thing, so I thought maybe things were getting better. A little.
Sans.
And I don't know what I expected tonight. I just thought... I don't know, you spend all this time alone out here. And you're always nagging me about this stuff, and it could have been...
Sans gestured vaguely with one hand. He was angry, his words clipped and his voice creeping higher.
It could have been... fun, or something. Like that day last week, like before. I thought maybe we could help each other out like we always do. All you've been trying to do this whole time is get me to give up and leave.
Papyrus felt about an inch tall. This just isn't a good time. That's all, he said. He checked the trees again, unable to meet Sans's eyes. The itching was getting worse. The forest was quiet, and Sans was raising his voice. And he felt so very exposed up here.
Oh, sure, it's not a good time.
Papyrus could practically hear Sans's eyes rolling.
I swear to God, it's like you're a different person. And I don't even know why. I'm so tired of this. Leave then!
Papyrus tried for sternness, but his voice cracked. He moved to cross his arms again, and ended up sort of hugging himself instead, trying to comfort himself, or trying to hold something in. Or both. His brother stood up straight.
Excuse me?
Oh, Sans was pissed, no mistake. If I'm upsetting you so much, then leave, Papyrus repeated, with a little more feeling. I wanted to be by myself anyway, so go away! He hated that he had to do this. But he was over an hour late already, and he was getting twitchy, and he felt weird, and that couldn't be good. Sans glared, face pinched and shrinking in on himself.
You've got to be kidding me.
Papyrus took a deep breath. He could do this. It was for Sans's own good. He wasn't safe here. No, he said. You're the allegedly funny one, not me. I don't know what makes you think you'll do me any good when you can't even handle yourself. Go back to town, Sans. He looked down his nasal bone at Sans. It was easy to pull off a haughty look, given the height advantage. I don't want you here. I can't use smaller words than that. Sans flinched, like he'd been hit. He recovered quickly, though, darting forward to stand toe-to-toe with Papyrus.
You know what?
he said, voice quivering and tears gathering at the corners of his eye sockets.
Fuck you, Papyrus. You don't see me treating you like garbage just because I had a bad day. Which is every goddamn day, by the way.
His finger prodded Papyrus's breastplate with a hard tick.
I'm done. So you better tell me what the hell your problem is.
Right, tick.
Fucking
tick.
Now.
Magic shivered up Papyrus's spine, tickled the roof of his mouth. He was angry and scared, and starting to panic. This was turning bad. He felt wrong. I don't have to tell you anything, he hissed. Desperate. Go away!
Make me!
Sans shoved him, putting all his weight behind it. Reflexively, Papyrus swung, backhanding Sans to the ground. Both brothers froze, shocked. Sans moved first, bringing his hands up to shield himself.
Whoa!
He wasn't looking at Papyrus. His fearful stare was fixed on a point just above Papyrus's head. Papyrus felt the flow of his magic, and realized what his brother was staring at. No. Spent magic fell around them like snow as Papyrus frantically tore down whatever had formed when he'd lashed out. Slowly, like he was facing down a dangerous animal, Sans stumbled to his feet. His outstretched hand could have been beckoning Papyrus closer or holding him at bay. It was impossible to tell.
Bro?
The single syllable punched through the shock, letting panic take hold in earnest. Get away from me! Papyrus's first impulse was to put his brother on the ground again. He knew Sans couldn't, would never, hurt him, but that one hard push had been enough to set off this. And he didn't understand. He turned and sprinted down the far side of the hill. He had to get away. His magic swamped him, choking him, and he forced it down. Down, down, down. And it was going to escape. He couldn't keep it under. He was going to go off, and they were miles from town, and Sans was so fragile. Why was this happening? Papyrus heard footsteps following him, heard Sans calling to him. He couldn't make out the words. All his higher functions washed out with dumb, primal terror. Get away! Hold it down! Hold it in! Get away! Far away! He was faster, he could lose him, get to the trees and hold it down, 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 down! Keep running! Icy blue filled his vision. He stumbled under his own momentum, tried to stop or change direction, and wound up slamming into the fence of bones Sans had raised in front of him. Electric cold zapped through him, blue, white pain. It flipped the switch on his fight-or-flight response, and his magic ripped free, unspooling in every direction, out of all control. Distantly, separated by space or the drug haze of absolute fear, Papyrus could hear Sans shouting. Weight that wasn't weight pulled him down, hard enough to knock the wind out of him if he'd had lungs. He clawed at the ground, leaving furrows in the snow. Every movement was a monumental effort. The surface of his bones prickled with the familiar sensation of blue. Sans was very good at blue, Papyrus recalled, dimly through his panic. He didn't even need an attack as a vector. Papyrus tried to grasp at his magic, to reel it back in. Half-formed waves snaked along the ground and lashed the air, directionless and knife-sharp, seeking something, anything alive to target. Ethereal fire wreathed his hands and licked up his arms, arsenic blue and painfully bright. He couldn't hold it. Sans ran, half-tripping down the hillside.
Oh fuck!
He chanted the phrase like a spell.
Oh fuck, god damn it!
Stay back! Papyrus shouted, voice hoarse and weak. His attacks bled his strength away with no way to cut them off. He thrashed against the force, pulling him down. He needed to get farther away from Sans. Sans simply pressed harder, pinning him flat against the ground. Steel groaned ominously around him, and Papyrus wondered exactly how ironic it would be to be crushed by his armor. Beyond the blinding, chaotic light of his own magic, Papyrus could make out the single lantern glow of Sans' magic, contained and controlled as it should be. Sans jigged anxiously at the edge of Papyrus's range, wanting to get closer but not daring to put himself in the path of a stray attack. Thankfully, Sans' range was slightly larger, but neither of them knew by precisely how much. Back up! An arc of partially congealed bones collapsed into magical noise mere yards away from where Sans was standing.
Sorry, can't do that,
Sans called, voice strained. He must have been holding Papyrus at the edge of his own range.
You just ran off again!
He paced back and forth, just out of reach of the attacks breaking like surf in front of him.
Bro, you gotta relax. Try to breathe or something.
Breathing was easier said than done. Had Papyrus been the type of monster that needed air, he'd have been in serious trouble by now. Sans was pressing hard enough that he could feel his long bones bend slightly when he tried to raise his limbs, and his ribcage was compressed to the point of pain. The ache gave his panic focus, a pivot point, and he tried to ground himself to it. With considerable effort, he could take very shallow breaths, trying to ignore the maelstrom in favor of listening to the soft creak of his ribs. In and hold. Out and hold. Over and over. Over and over. He didn't count his breaths. Didn't know how long he waited, crushed down into the snow while his magic raged around him. In the end, he couldn't tell if he'd successfully calmed down or if he'd simply burned through all available fuel. He didn't know when Sans approached him, but when he felt his brother's hand on his arm, his flinch was only a flinch. Nothing else.
Easy, easy. I got you, Papyrus.
Sans leaned over so Papyrus could see him. He looked exhausted, and tear tracks stained his face.
You okay now?
Papyrus croaked a laugh. Okay, how?
If I let you go, are you gonna dust me?
Sans knelt down next to him. No, Papyrus said, after some thought. After more thought, he added, Don't think so.
I guess that's good enough,
Sans said, and the weight that wasn't weight disappeared. Papyrus curled up on himself as much as his armor would allow. He thought he ought to be crying, or something, but then that would require energy, and he was utterly spent. I'm sorry. He hoped Sans could hear him. Anything over a whisper was just too much effort.
No,
Sans sighed.
This was my fault. It was a dumb idea.
He brushed his fingertips over the side of Papyrus's face, sighing again when Papyrus cringed at the unexpected sting.
Man, you got pretty scuffed up. Sorry, he said. I was sure you'd stop in time.
The bones. Right. Papyrus reached up with a hand that felt oddly light now and touched his face, wincing. Rough, pitted abrasions trailed from brow to halfway down his jaw on the left side of his face. It felt like he probably had matching abrasions running all down the side of his body, too. He hadn't been hit with the business end of a blue attack in years. He'd forgotten how much they hurt. It's okay, he said. The sting would fade. He'd had worse. You were trying to help. Sans leaned against him, likely too tired to hold himself up anymore.
Yeah. I made you have a nervous breakdown, and then I jacked up your face. Super helpful. Go me.
Papyrus moved to do something soothing. He wasn't in a state to plan things out. Whatever he intended to do, he misjudged how hard it would be to move his arm and ended up boffing Sans in the side of the head. Sorry, he said, and patted Sans clumsily square in the face. He let his arm drop back down. Moving was clearly not worth it right now. Didn't want to hurt you. One solid hit. That's all it would have taken. No possibility of rescue. Nothing left to heal. He shivered.
You didn't,
Sans said. They sat in silence for several minutes, quietly horrified and so tired. Papyrus watched the snow fall. It was coming down heavier now, big and fluffy, perfect for snowballs. He remembered something. Every day, he said, and coughed to clear some of the scratchiness from his voice. Every day is bad?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Sans put his hood up, tugging it down to keep the snowflakes out of his eye sockets.
It's not because of you. I mean,
he said.
That's not really helping, but like you said, you're allowed to have problems too.
He leaned back, laying his head against Papyrus's breastplate with a hollow clack.
Don't suppose you want to tell me what those are now?
Papyrus shifted his arm out of the way. From this angle, he could see up under the hood to meet Sans' eyes. Why is every day bad? He he countered. Why did you stop trying? Sans sighed, scowling up at the hill.
I'll tell, he said. If you do.
His gaze returned to Papyrus, and Papyrus had to look away.
Yeah, Sans said. I figured.
Papyrus scrubbed at his eye sockets. There were those tears. Better late than never. Great. Sorry, he said, for what felt like the 1000th time.
I want to.
Sans sighed, also for what felt like the 1000th time.
Then why don't you?
I just can't. No matter what. They fell silent again for a while.
God.
Papyrus started, spooked out of the light doze he'd slipped into. He looked up at Sans, questioning.
All that,
Sans said, that telltale quiver back in his voice.
After all that, we're just gonna sit here and cry ourselves to sleep in the snow in the middle of the goddamn forest. Because we won't talk.
A noise bubbled up in his throat, somewhere between a laugh and a sob.
We're a mess.
Papyrus made a wordless sound of agreement. Gingerly, he pushed himself up to his knees, catching Sans when the movement jostled him. They both took a moment to wipe their faces dry, studiously not looking at each other. Sans stood first, and offered his hand to help Papyrus up. Papyrus took it, careful not to actually pull at all. He was tempted to just get rid of the armor, it was so blasted heavy. But it was expensive, he knew, and it would rust in the snow, even if he came back for it tomorrow. So he stood, shaking under the weight. They skirted around the hill, picking their way through the drifts because it was still easier than climbing, until they got back to the path they'd taken. Papyrus watched Sans weave along, half drunk with exhaustion. I can carry you if you want, he said. Sans shot him a skeptical look.
No, you can't,
he said, turning his attention back to making sure the ground was where he thought it was.
I'm good to walk.
They didn't say anything else after that. The walk back to the house was interminable. Snowden, when they reached it, was asleep and silent, dreamlike. The front door took an eon of fumbling with keys and shaky hands. The TV was still on. Too much work to turn it off. Papyrus shucked off every plate of armor he could lose without stopping, letting each piece thud to the floor, a trail of cold and heavy steel. The stairs were endless, but to hell and back with that couch. His bed was neatly made, and it was too much work to turn down the covers, so he just let himself fall onto it. He felt the mattress dip, felt Sans press against him, back to back. Felt the hitching of his brother's shoulders, caught the barely audible sobbing he tried to muffle with his jacket sleeves. Papyrus had no more tears to cry. He was numb. He was grateful. Dawn wasn't far off. There would be consequences, he knew. Later he would be frightened. Later there would be apologies and begging and fear and pain. But right now he didn't care. He didn't care about anything.